Hi, welcome back. Welcome to my new favorite shirt. It's from Claire V, and all of my expectations became reality as soon as I put it on. I was like, oh yeah, no, this is the best shirt that's ever existed, so I'll link it below. Now that I have screwed my indexing for this video, today we're going to be doing a fresh this or that. This or that is the extraordinarily clever name that I've given a series on my channel where I help you decide between two similar products, sometimes more than two. I ask for submissions on my Instagram, which is at Kackie. So keep an eye out for that if you follow me, and that is where y'all tell me, hey, I'm agonizing between these two things that are similar, and I'm going to swatch them and describe them. I will tell you who I think they're for and help you sort of parse the differences, but also I'll tell you in most cases what I would choose, like what I would recommend just based on, you know, whether I like it. So welcome to the series. I will also, at the end of the video, link the playlist so you can watch, you know, more of these. Especially if this is the first time that you're seeing this series, you might have curiosity around some other products that I've already talked about, because there are definitely a lot. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm hot. I'm hot. Hi, I'm out of breath because I'm depressed. Yes, I am. I'm having just a really hard time like muscling up the stamina to like do life right now, but I know that if I don't, I'll feel worse. So I completely overcompensated in asking for prompts this time, and I have so many. We're gonna start at the beginning. This is a really good question. It's not really a this or that, but it's definitely a question that we've needed to address on my channel for a while, and it is the Bite Foundation and Powder replacement. So a recommendation for replacing the Bite Beauty Foundation and the Bite Beauty Powder, the Micellar Changemaker series that they put out, which was just honestly kind of a game changer for me, a change maker and a game changer. It was just a fantastic formula that I felt like, you know, while there are really finicky formulas out there, like the Ilia Foundation, for example, I'm like, I love it, but like a lot of people say that like day to day it changes and they hate it, whatever. I digress. Bite Beauty made a foundation that worked for so many skin types. Like it wasn't too dry for me, even though it had this really lovely kind of like satin finish, but like my oily skinned friends and people who lived in humidity and stuff like that, it worked beautifully for them too, and it looked immaculate on camera. It was definitely something that I would recommend, you know, being photographed in or something like that. And I've taken a while to think about it because I have a lot of dewier kind of finishes in my collection. It's just something that I gravitate towards. I felt like because I was on Bite Beauty's PR list and because this was their first ever, you know, complexion series that they put out, that was what kind of got me to try it, but it's not necessarily based on its finish or like the description of the performance of the product, something that I would have thought was for me. And so I would say the foundation that I'm wearing today is the one that I would recommend. And fortunately for those of you who liked Bite Beauty for its clean ingredients, it is also a brand that self-identifies as clean. It's the Armas Re-Evolve Natural Finish Foundation. No silicones and no fragrance. That was something that a lot of people were confused about with the Bite Beauty Foundation. They were like, there's a clean hair, it has a scent to it. You know, I didn't mind the scent, but it was confusing that they did choose to do that. Curewise does that too. It is for a dupability thing, not dupability, but like counter marketing for brands. You know, they put a distinct fragrance in something so that someone has a harder time making a counterfeit of it. Again, this doesn't have a fragrance, and I really like this stuff. So I wear the shade 00. I have been having some issues with my skin recently as a result, kind of, you know, what I've narrowed it down to, unfortunately, of using this for, you know, 3 or 4 days in a row. My skin just freaked out. It like broke out everywhere. Like I have all these tiny pimples like on my cheeks. And if I get little tiny pimples on my cheeks, to me, that says a reaction. It's not like normal, you know, acne prone areas on my face. So this was the only thing that had kind of flip-flopped in my routine and that I had really stuck to for a while because I really like the appearance of it, but unfortunately my skin does not seem to like it long term. That said, I did want to go for something a little bit fuller coverage today and something that I could really count on to look really great and have a great shade match, and so that's why I reached for this. And then when someone asked that question, I was like, honestly, this is the best kind of dupe alternative for it because I have Fix Plus Magic Radiance on from MAC, which is a really dewy setting mist. So you are seeing a lot of that. I didn't like powder on top of it or anything. stop it. On its own, it has this really beautiful balanced texture to it that wears incredibly well for something, well, incredibly well anyway, to the point that you're kind of surprised that it doesn't have silicones in it. It's an extremely sophisticated formula and I've really enjoyed owning it. The only thing that I would be careful about is combining it with a concealer or like a primer or something that does have a lot of silicone in it, because they can kind of argue with each other. Like when I kind of wasn't thinking and I used the Kosas Revealer Concealer with this, if that's like your, you know, concealer of life, then I would steer clear of this, or, you know, try and find a concealer, you know, that is silicone free, because they kind of break each other up over the day, because the Kosas does have so many silicones in it that like are the stabilizers. So what I used with this today is actually the Chanel concealer, because it oddly doesn't have silicones in it, and then the Saint concealer is also a really good one. And when I say Saint, I don't mean S-E-I-N-T, I mean Saint, S-A-I-N-T Cosmetics. We're not talking about an MLM here. Saint kind of got the short end of the stick when mascara became Saint, S-E-I-N-T. Honestly, if they had the money, I bet they would sue, because that kind of ruins their reputation. It's kind of like how Thrive Cosmetics isn't an MLM, but there is an MLM called Thrive. And yeah, it really can't help, can it? I think we need a disambiguation for that too. That's what this is. This whole series is just like a disambiguation series. Thrive versus Make Concealer. So this is one that is better demonstrated than described, because they're just really different. So Thrive Cosmetics put out their Buildable Blur Concealer. It's one of my favorites. So it's really great because it can go to a pretty full coverage. Not quite as much coverage as like the Kosas, but pretty stinking close. But it can also sheer out to something that entirely blends in on the skin and basically disappears. I would just say it's like a slightly more hydrating, slightly lower coverage version of the Kosas. I might as well swatch the Kosas. I'm sure someone's curious. So this is the Thrive Cosmetics in Fair Warm, and then this is the Kosas in 1.5C, which you can see is a little bit cooler toned, but you know, it all kind of shakes out in the end. And then here, this is 03 Light C in the Skin Mimetic Concealer from Make. I will say, Make is one of the few brands where I feel like I could wear a lot of shades. Like, I don't know what it is about it. It's just a little bit more adaptive in terms of the actual shade, and it's also got just less coverage. And so I feel like that kind of serum quality, as it melts into the skin, you end up with something that, I don't know, it's a little more flexible in its actual color. So you can see, as I just kind of blended each one out, I tried to do it evenly, that we have Thrive here. Thrive is going to be a little more brightening, but also it's just a brighter color on my skin, whereas the Kosas, the entire line, it's sort of a, you know, known thing that their entire line leans a little bit yellow, and so a cool tone actually kind of evens out to be neutral on me. And then we have that Skin Mimetic Concealer, which again, it's a little bit too dark, the shade is, but you can see that it has less coverage and it's much more like serum-y. None of them has any kind of fragrance, any more than just, you know, the smell of the ingredients. They don't smell herbaceous or anything, they just smell like makeup. And the main thing that I would say about the Make Beauty is that it's the lowest coverage of the three. It's beautifully hydrating, it really blurs and blends into the skin, but you're not gonna get a lot of like color cancellation or, you know, obscuring of dark circles or anything, but it's gonna have a little bit of like skincare benefits. So does the Kosas. The Kosas has a lot of like caffeine and like other kind of eye cream ingredients in it, but it's for a much lower key face of makeup and it stays the dewiest of the three. The scale of dewiness, it's like the Kosas is gonna go down to like a satin finish, and the Thrive is going to stay a little more hydrated looking, and then the Make is going to be straight up dewy. It's for people who have dry under eyes and your skin is just gonna soak up that emollients, but it's just not going to give you the same amount of coverage as the other two. And if I had to pick my favorite, I think it's always gonna be the Kosas, just because I like the amalgamation of all the benefits better. And I do think that it's a really good like shade range. Now, someone said Tula versus MAC Fix Plus. I don't have regular Fix Plus right now. I just ran out and I need to buy another one. I actually went to the mall on Saturday and had plans to buy it, but then my child ran all over the department store and it was a lot of fun. Like, that was why we brought him there. He doesn't really cause havoc, he just has a lot of fun. I just didn't get around to buying MAC Fix Plus, let's just put it that way. So I have MAC Fix Plus Magic Radiance, and so it's pretty much the same thing, except obviously it's going to make you even more radiant. And this is the bottle it comes in, but this is my new favorite hairspray that I had to rebottle. It's not hairspray, it is the Laura Mercier setting mist, but it's hairspray. And the big difference here is, do you see that? Do you see that iridescence? Do you hear that there's a ball in there? It's because there is actual radiance to this. There's like little flecks of mica in it that I have never, God, it smells incredible. They both have scents. That was one of the things I was really excited about with the new Laura Mercier one, is that it's unscented. I was like, oh, I can finally offer people an unscented one. Nah, just use your hairspray. Don't do that. I'm kidding. I'm just saying it's like no better than a hairspray. I'm terrible at detecting actual particles, so I can't really speak to it. I've never noticed actual particles in there, but it has like a physical luminosity to it versus just a textural luminosity to it. That's the main difference. And I think that they kind of fall on two ends of the spectrum in that sense, because the Fix Plus has more emollient, dewy radiance, more reflection to it in terms of the actual like glycerin in the formula. It's a little bit thicker, you know, on the skin, and it's going to like melt your makeup more, versus this one that is a little thinner, has a little bit more like actual skincare benefit to it. I think it's got, you know, your hyaluronic acid, strawberry extract, kiwi fruit water, probiotics. Like Tula is going to be much more of a skincare oriented spray that also happens to be a really elegant setting mist, but I don't get the like wildly perfected finish that I get from Fix Plus. Like Fix Plus, I will always go back to it. I just feel like this one is gorgeous. It's a pleasure to use. Oh, it smells so good. I love the smell. And I just know that it is like a really beneficial skincare product as well. So it's a really nice thing to set my makeup with, especially when I'm having breakouts and my skin needs a little bit of help restabilizing. Oh, she dewy now. Oh no, oh no. Ooh, okay, Phytosurgeon's Fume versus MAC Blush Please. All right. So while I open up a new Fume, because mine did expire, he sent me a new one. MAC has, you know, obviously the squishiness. So if you're unfamiliar with the Glow Play blushes, they are putty blushes. And so they're going to have this really awesome like finish on the skin. I do wish they were a little more solid, like the Bare Minerals Bounce and Blur, because I feel like this does have a little too much creaminess to it that disturbs my makeup. It's like you have to kind of like pick it up. You have to like grip it to pick it up basically with a brush, and then to spread it out, I do feel like it does start to disturb my makeup a little bit, whereas I wish it would kind of like pick a flavor. You know, it's like, are you all the way in like the silicone territory where it's almost just like this really blurring powder? Or are you a cream? And I'll just use a cream brush, you know, with it and get the cream effect. But like, it's halfway in between, and I know a lot of people love this formula. I don't reach for it because I do feel like for the finish that I get, it makes me too nervous that I'm going to disturb my makeup underneath. But here is Blush Please. People love it mainly because, you know, of the color as well. So, wow. This is an example of when y'all just get it right, okay? Because like everybody will submit these things and I'll go, oh yeah, no, I'll compare them. And then I put them next to each other and I'm like, how did you know they were so similar? Probably another creator or something, but like that's the Phytosurgeon's. Ooh, my goodness. It's brown. It's just such an ideal shade. In fact, okay, I think that what's worth swatching against this right now is actually my Salt New York, because I need to know where it stacks up against Maple. Very, very different formulas. Yet again, we're talking about Salt New York here. These are Salt New York blushes, and then I have my complexion product in there, but they are a lot dewier. You know, they don't set down per se. They're just supposed to be very like skin-like. So extremely similar in shade. And I love all of these kinds of colors because they add this kind of at-home richness to my cheeks that I feel like I could almost wear without any complexion product or anything. It just looks like my cheeks would naturally do that. And that's very unique to me, obviously, but there's definitely something to be said for that, and it's why I own so many colors like this. And if you're my skin twin, that's news you can use. But the other thing that I would recommend here, because, you know, you look at something like Mimi, this is what always happens in these videos. You know, there's Mimi from Westman Atelier, which is basically the same color as Latte from Anastasia Beverly Hills, which is basically the same color as Kierweiss inner glow. And then it's also pretty much the same color as the Pat McGrath Flirtatious blush. So when we're talking about this shade and you're talking about wanting something that's a powder, I would go Pat McGrath Flirtatious. It's just so good. And it's going to give you that same blurred quality that you get from the Glow Play blush from MAC. If you want a cream version of this, the Phytosurgence is absolutely, well, honestly, I can't decide. The Phytosurgence is gorgeous. Blessed Atelier is gorgeous. The Salt New York is gorgeous. But yeah, they're different, right? So, you know, West Atelier is going to be a little bit more matte. The Phytosurgence is going to be more blurring, and Salt New York is going to be like just really hydrating and gorgeous and dewy with less wear time probably. I hope that that helps to demystify it. I will link all of them below. But yeah, I mean, I would say that like that is probably what you're most excited about, is that blur. And you can get that with Pat McGrath Flirtatious. But this is what always happens. I always end up with like a handful of swatches where I'm like, oh, but it's like this. Oh, but it's also like this. Oh, but it's kind of like this, you know? And then my own curiosity gets the best of me, but that is a color that I own a lot of. The center shades of Aether Desert Sunset versus Kaja Orange Blossom. See, this is the kind of stuff that gets me like reinvigorated about beauty, because I've never thought to compare those. She is my baby. Look at this loved palette. I will say, if I have to like hazard a guess, I'm gonna guess that the formulas are really different. I think Kaja has just a lot maybe of silicone in it. It has something incredibly emollient to it that makes the shadows bouncy, because they do call it a bouncy shadow trio. This is amazing how intuitive y'all are about like isolating 3 shades in a palette and comparing it. That is just so wild. I'm gonna go ahead and just put the coral one on there because it is technically in the center. The one thing you'll notice is the difference in the textures. The Kaja, like I said, it just has a lot more like creamy pigment to it, and Aether is going to be a lot sheerer, but kind of color for color there, you have something that's a lot less peach and a lot more pink over here. More of it, all of these are more topper oriented, whereas these are kind of standalone shades, you know, they're sort of star of the show shades. Then we have this one that's a lot more gold, but it does kind of shift a little bit pink, whereas this one is like that ballerina pink almost. Maybe I should have switched those. I don't know. This one looked more like that one on my finger. That was my logic. But this one, they're really, really similar in their undertone and actually even in their shift, but this one's just way more saturated. It's like that bedroomized color, and this is just gonna be a lot sheerer in the Aether. So yeah, it really has to do, actually, whoa, now that I'm looking at it up close, the Aether shifts kind of like pink and gold. It actually has a whole array of shades that it's shifting. You see that? Whereas this is just kind of a brown shift, brown with a little bit of like a champagne to it. It's more about, to me, the look you're trying to go for. Are you going for something that's going to just totally enter the room before you, which can be a fantastic thing, the way that those Kaja ones are going to, especially the really bright pinky gold one. The brown one, it's hard to compare anything to this brown because it is my favorite eyeshadow that I own. You know, like that superlative does kind of make me extraordinarily biased because nothing beats this brown. Nothing beats this brown. The consistency of the shade, the actual temperature value of it, the way that it applies, the way that it wears, I love it so much. A lot of people say that like it creases or it doesn't last on them. I don't have that experience, but I do want to make you aware of it because I don't know, some people have oily lids, everybody has different needs, things like that, but I find that it just like wears incredibly well all day. I love them, but this is going to be so much sheerer. These are meant to be kind of blended and layered, you know, and not one of them is going to just completely overwhelm an eye look. I think that that's also why I think that even though it has, you know, this kind of shocking coral in the middle of it, it's still like one of the most beginner friendly but interesting palettes I've ever owned. This Aether Desert Sunset palette. Like, it would really surprise you how approachable this color story is, especially because these outer shades, and I know I say this all the time, but these outer shades, like, they're just these really wearable, especially if you're complected like me, like neutral greeny golds that look really, really at home on just a neutral or like even desaturated neutral kind of skin tone. So yeah, I find it really easy to like play in here because, like I said, it's not like one thing is going to just totally overwhelm your look. Eyeshadow similar to the Neon Green Chantecaille Cheek and Eye Thing Ray. Hold please. Oh, you chose the right question at the right time. Your timing is impeccable. All right, this is going to be quite a swatch fest. So I'm going to try and conserve some room here. So here is a big fat swatch of the cheek and eye shade in Ray from Chantecaille. Now, the reason that my eyes lit up thinking about comparing this to other things in my collection is because this is something in the past that I have talked about being one of the most common colors that I buy, especially in single eyeshadows. It's just something that I end up gravitating towards because it's a really easy color for me to wear. Look at that. I mean, yes, this is kind of supposed to be a universal shade because it works as a highlighter on deep skin tones and as a bronzer on fair skin tones and everything in between. But I do own it in a lot of eyeshadows. I want to start with this one because I'm actually not sure how close it is, but this is one of the new flash fluorescent eyeshadows from Phytosurgence. So I got all of these a couple of weeks ago. Okay, it's not super duper similar, but it's still kind of in that same colorway. And it does have a lot more glitter to it. So that was the whole thing. Actually, wow, when the light hits it, they're really similar. This one's called Astral Atmosphere. And when the light hits it, yeah, that's really similar. The Phytosurgence shadows, they have the distinction of like the most feedback from y'all that like they don't crease, even on oily eyelids. Then we have my new Bodyography one in Celestial. This one I think is gonna be a little more gold. Yes, and it's a lot lighter. See that? It's gonna be peacher, just even on like the deepest spots where the light hits it. Then, this is the one that comes to mind immediately, and this is the L'Oreal Infallible Eyeshadow in Amber Rush. And this is great because this thing's like $7, something like that. And it is a true metallic foil. That's the thing that it does have that's different, is just that like the finish doesn't have all that kind of like spangly blurring to it. No, instead it is a true like you just painted your nails with it kind of metallic. Then we have MAC Sweet Heat, which is another really popular kind of crowd favorite. And it does look like Sweet Heat is going to be more neutral. Look at that. It almost makes Ray look freaking orange by comparison. So Sweet Heat does have that really nice like, you know, anchor of like beige. It's a little less saturated. So far, the most similar still is the Phytosurgence. But let me tell you, like sinking my fingers into all of these right now is just giving me endorphins. It's really nice. And then I have Hourglass Ray, which is gonna be similar in shade, but it's just a lot more kind of particulated. It's literal scattered light. So it's like you're gonna end up with a lot more scattered glitter there. And then finally, the other one that comes to mind is Angelica from Lisa Aldridge. And I'll put that one up here. She's a little more neutral as well. And it's gonna be more of a satin finish. Consistent satin finish, but it's a liquid shadow. So by contrast, I would say that the Phytosurgence is just the most similar in terms of like an eyeshadow I would want to wear that's in that exact color. And then, you know, the Hourglass Scattered Light in Ray is a very close second. I am kind of wondering versus like what I have on my eyes right now, because I think that like a lot of people would probably be curious because it's not that far off, but it's actually Rose Fire exclusively. Rose Fire right here from the Anastasia Rose Metals palette. So it's a lot oranger, like fire orange. Makes the Chantecaille look downright pink by contrast, because it's so orange. These are all so gorgeous, and they're all just like such easy formulas too. Like just can't say enough about them. And I'm proud to say that I actually just gave y'all options that spanned the price ranges for once in my freaking life. Also, one that I don't have anymore is Alluring from Illamasqua. Another one that's really similar. I think I got rid of it honestly because the Infallible is like exactly like it. Amber Rush is exactly like it. So I was like, I'm never gonna tell you to buy the Illamasqua one because it's like, you know, 3 times the price. Especially when it comes to single shadows, you're not always or almost ever going to get like a really luxurious packaging situation. Victoria Beckham is probably like the exception, but I mean, most of them are in the same little tubs. So you don't need to go and pay like a whole bunch more unless the formula is just like that much better, you know? And most of the time it's not. Gucci bronzer versus the Makeup by Mario. That's sitting right in front of me because I love both of them so much. So I have all of the Makeup by Mario bronzers and they're all in one shade, which is light, but I'm assuming that you mean the powder, and I'd be curious to see this comparison as well. So I'm doing this on my non-dominant hand here, so pardon my swatches if they're bad. All right, that's actually a really good comparison. Like, you can see why I find those two shades appealing, and it's because you can hardly even see those swatches, right? It's like, Kackie, can't you get a better swatch than that? No, because they're that fair, which is fantastic. It just makes it so much easier for me to apply them, you know? We're talking about like things that actually blend onto my skin and look sincerely like they might have happened by nature. But this is the Makeup by Mario in light, which you can see is a lot yellower, greener by comparison, but it's like if you take that swatch away, oh wow, suddenly she's like neutral and almost kind of rosy. It's just the fact that the Gucci is so rosy. It was the one that I used in my Indie Sleaze video, and like I could have gone without blush at all because it's so blushy. Yeah, ooh, you know, while we're here, probably a good idea to go ahead and give y'all the perspective of the Jones Road ones, just because I know people will probably ask, especially if you didn't get a chance to watch that video yet, because the Jones Road Dusty Rose is so distinctly pink and so like actually rosy that it could read as a blush, and then this is my better color in that range, and that is the light tan. So light tan, very, very similar to Makeup by Mario, pretty similar to the Gucci, but the Gucci is still quite rosy. Especially when you take this away, all of a sudden it looks very rosy, but when you compare it to Dusty Rose, it just kind of blends in with the other swatches. The Haus Labs versus Hourglass Loose Powder. I don't have the Hourglass anymore because I actually finished it, but I have the Haus Labs here. It's not really worth swatching a powder either. I will just describe it to you. Haus Labs is going to be really brightening and it's going to give you angel skin, but not a ton of coverage, but quite a bit of brightening. Whereas the Hourglass is going to add coverage. It's going to give you this beautiful finish, this like ethereal skin kind of finish, but it's so perfecting and it's so kind of bulletproof. It's something that I would choose for my wedding day or something. I don't want to say it's like heavy, but it's in the realm with like the Laura Mercier powder or the Thrive Cosmetics powder in the way that you can use it to actually build coverage on your skin. I never told y'all what powder I would pick for the Bite Beauty. I would go with the Make, probably, because it has like that many shades and because it does still add a little bit of coverage. It's so beautiful, so beautiful. I love that stuff. I really, really loved the Bite Beauty powder, but yeah, I would say that the Make is probably the most similar. Oh, Charlotte Tilbury Blush Wand versus the Kulfi. All right, let me pull those and I'll show you. It's more of a visual thing. So Kulfi put out the Mendy Moment blushes and I'm very impressed with them, but they are extraordinarily pigmented. And also they are very pure tones in most cases. So the pink is like, you know, that's gonna show up on a deep skin tone or medium skin tone, you know, and it's gonna be this really gorgeous punch of pink. Whereas like, it's gonna be a little much for me. It's gonna be hard for me to control. Now, what is this one called? Sandalwood Swirl. This is like a really nuanced kind of more muddied color that's easier for me to wear. And that's why I like it so much. But I am wearing the Charlotte Tilbury today because I just like it so much. It's so easy to use. I will say, if you're looking for a really cool color, you're gonna find something like cool as in interesting, you're gonna find something more interesting in Kulfi. Like Charlotte Tilbury does not do interesting, daring colors of things. She really just stays in her lane. She's like, you want a really good pink? Baby, I got you. I'm not gonna do the British accent. It's like, hey, you want a really, really good peach? I'm gonna make you a really good peach. And it's gonna be in a lovely formula in most cases, but like, we're not going to be testing the boundaries of like what you can put on skin color-wise. Whereas, I mean, that pink, I want to see it on like a golden undertone, like mid skin tone, like mid deep. Whew, oh, you know, it would be just like heartbreaking. But actually, the Sandalwood Swirl is a little bit more similar there to Pillow Talk. I just find Pillow Talk to be fantastic for people who look like me because it's so desaturated. It's like that blush you can put on when you're going, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't have it in me to choose a blush right now. I just want to know that I put blush on and I need it to look good and not ruin my face with makeup. Like, I'm going to go for Pillow Talk, and it's just easier because I can dot, dot, dot. The formula really allows me to like blend it after I've just like put it straight onto my face. And so I really enjoy that about it, whereas I do feel like with the Mendy Moment blushes, I have to kind of plan ahead a little bit more. I have to think a little bit harder about how I'm going, like what I'm gonna apply it with and stuff like that. But they are both like really incredible finishes to this formula, to these both formulas. They both have this lovely kind of, like I would say like a satin dry down, but the Mendy Moment blushes do have a little bit of shimmer in them. Like when you build them up, you start to see it. Some shades you see it more than others, but it's probably because I wear more of it for certain colors than I do others. And so I think that like this, that's why I continue to go for the Charlotte Tilbury, even though like just from like a variety being the spice of life standpoint, like I would rather recommend the Kulfi just because I think that it's a good brand to support, you know what I mean? So like if you find that those colors appeal to you, it's probably like just as good of an investment. I just happen to go towards the Charlotte Tilbury because I feel like I'm always in the same mindset for the colors and the formula. You know, it's like I'm in this like very like low effort kind of mindset. Maybe the Charlotte Tilbury, they're just better depression blushes for me, you know? Because they're just easier. It's an easier formula and easier colors for me to wear, and that probably doesn't translate across the board. Okay, well, the Charlotte Tilbury ones like don't come off, so like that's something to note. Oh, by the way, if you see a little tissue right there, that's what that is. It's not like a booger or something. I have a literal cut in my nostril right there so that I have to keep something there, or every time my nose runs and it like, you know, kind of follows this like line on my nose, it will sting like I have put rubbing alcohol in it. So that is my only solution, is just like taking something really like a balm, like a lip balm or something, and putting it right there, and then just taking a tiny piece of tissue and shoving it inside that little area. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just need winter to be over. Ooh, Phytosurgeon's Verdant Force Field or Make Beauty Hydrascape. That's a tough one. No, they're actually extremely different from each other. So Verdant Force Field has a really beautiful kind of hydrated finish to it, and it's going to behave almost like a balancing, hydrating kind of primer. It's beautiful under makeup, but I feel like it doesn't necessarily interfere with or change the way that your makeup behaves on top of it, whereas the Make Beauty Hydrascape Reverse Emulsion is going to give you a lot more glow and a lot more slip underneath your makeup. So I would say that like the Hydrascape is probably more for people who have like very, very dry skin or who want to add a glow to their finished look, versus the Verdant Force Field where it's like, there are just days where you just can't think of doing your makeup without it, because it's basically going to like ask your skin what it needs, fill in the gaps, and it's kind of like the vitamin enriched face base from Bobbi Brown in that respect, where you put it on and your skin's like, thank you, you know, but it also has the matcha in it, and so, or green tea or whatever, and so it's got caffeine and it's gonna like wake your face up. This stuff is incredible. It's incredible. But it's like, I think of it more as like a balancing product and something that's going to like add an enhanced level of just like healthiness to your skin, versus the Make Beauty, which is like a cosmetic choice, you know? It's going to completely change the finish of your skin. Okay, Milk Contour Stick or Westman Atelier Biscuit. This is a good opportunity to swatch these against each other. Again, this is going to be so useful visually. This very, very, very cool one here is Toasted from Milk, and then this is Biscuit from Westman Atelier, and I'm gonna also use my little monkey toes and pull the Oma, which is my contour of choice, and put that against it. And this is in White Pearl. All right. Okay, this is very valuable information for your everyday life. So the Milk is so gray. It's so gray, and it's so saturated with pigment. When I apply this like directly to my face, the formula doesn't really like, it's kind of weird to touch it, because it's like, it has a lot of slip, but then underneath that, it's kind of like weird and grippy. Like it's too thin. Do you know what I mean? Like it kind of almost has like a dry oil feel to it, but not in a way that makes it easier to blend on the skin. Whereas I feel like their blushes, I don't know if the formulas are different, but I do feel like they kind of are. Do you see how like even as I kind of wipe this away, like I'm wiping with my finger, I'm literally trying to wipe it off. It won't. Like once it's on and it's kind of unforgiving. Whereas this is my and it, no matter how much you kind of blend this, it stays so beautifully creamy and even. And like, if I really hated what I did, I can wipe it off, you know, it actually comes off. Whereas the Milk just kind of doesn't. It sort of wants to stick and commit and that's it. And then we have Biscuit from Westman Atelier, forget about it. It's so pretty. It's more of a bronzer, I feel like. It does work. Like if it goes onto my cheeks, it's not the worst thing in the world, you know? Instead of like into, you know, the contour areas. Now blended out, they all look kind of similar, but I would obviously rank this one number one for me for my skin tone, and they have the most shades out of all of these is Uma. It's just such a good formula, so good. I will preach the gospel of the Uma contour forever. I would say that the Milk is not user-friendly. It's very difficult to use, and the issue for me is that it is so cool toned that I think that the color was a good decision for fair skin, but the amount of color, the amount of pigment in the actual formula and how difficult the formula is to sheer out is the problem. And so I feel like they need to kind of go back to the drawing board store. And then, you know, this is the Westman Atelier one. It accomplishes something really unique in that I feel like I can wear it as a contour on a very unmade up kind of day. And I feel like it's because they have that like little bit more warmth in there, not so far to the extreme of like Charlotte Tilbury, who all of her contours are actually bronzers. I feel like the Westman Atelier one is just saying like, hey, we're going to make this a little bit easier for you if you only want to put on like a little bit, or if you don't really know what you're doing. I feel like the Uma at least is like, it's a contour for people who know what they want out of a contour. They know where to put it, they know where they want to blend it and stuff like that. It's going to perform really, really well for that. Whereas I do feel like the Milk, I've not seen it work for anybody. Now, that's only my shade. I watched Ohema, is that how you say her name? Just saw a clip of one of her videos trying the deepest one, and I think that like Milk is the first brand to make one that is like almost completely black. I'll show you. I am lucky enough that they sent them all to me, but I mean, they really deserve snaps for making a contour this color. It might just look black to your eye, but it's actually kind of a deep blackberry color. It has kind of a purple base to it, and that is the most intelligent approach to an ultra deep contour shade I've ever seen. And I would say that, you know, because you're working with something that is packed with the same amount of pigment probably as the fairest one, by the time that gets onto deep skin, they're probably I don't know for sure, but they're probably going to have an easier time using that than I do with my shade with the same amount of pigment in it. Again, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but like I do think that it's important to mention that they really went out and did it on that one. Like, look at it. It's like deep blackberry. Hindash Matte Color Fluids versus Danessa Myricks Color Fixes, please. I apologize because I don't actually have any of the matte color fixes anymore from Danessa Myricks. I just have like shimmers, and then I have one that's like, I don't know, this one is a Color Fix Cream, and this is Celebration. This is about the closest I have to one that's not entirely shimmery, because I'm just here for like Milky Way, you know what I mean? Like just me up, you know what I mean? Here is Celebration. I'll tell you I'll start by telling you my opinion first, which is not what I typically do. Like, while I love this color, oddly enough, I don't love using this on my eyes the way that like I really like using the Hindash color fluids on my eyes. So that is Celebration, and then I will put some of Hindash's Thorn here. The thing they have in common is that they both like completely dry down and become completely budge proof, and they're just utterly gorgeous. They really are. And you could accomplish this by putting some of like Boy Tears on top. Okay, so there is Boy Tears on top of it right here, and then this is Celebration. The thing about Celebration is when it shears out, it loses the integrity of the color on my skin because of the contrast mainly. You know, I think that that is something that's kind of hard to describe. So it's like you have, if I'm putting this on my eyes, right? And I am like trying to get a really consistent application, I'll put this on my hand to kind of mimic the way that, you know, there's like wrinkles and stuff in your eyes. What happens here is that it starts to kind of lose the original color that I see in the tube. I understand that it's just a faded version of it, but it doesn't look like that anymore. You know, it looks red. And it also, because of the way that it catches the light, it's kind of hard for me to build the saturation that I want with it like looking not messy. To me, it looks really messy. And even though the formulas both dry down completely, Hindashes, you can still work it a teeny tiny bit, even when it's like mostly dry. Whereas like the Danessa Myricks, it has been formulated to absolutely never budge ever for the rest of your life. Like it might as well be a tattoo. But when I talk about the color fluids, even as I blend it out and I feather the edges and it shears and shears and shears and shears and shears and shears, even as it shears, it keeps the integrity of the color. Every single bit of it is showing up as the color that's in the tube. Do you see that? Whereas I feel like the ones from Danessa Myricks, now the mattes might be a completely different story, but I do find them to be a little finickier. If you apply too much at once, they're going to get sticky and stay sticky. Whereas Hindash is like, this is not going to. It's just going to agree with you and it's going to dry down and be gorgeous. I would just say that I would choose the Hindash ones all day long. I just think, again, it's one of those things is like where it's stored in my brain. It's stored under easy to use. It's stored under things that I don't have to think too hard about when I'm using them. Whereas as much as I really think that the Danessa Myricks ones are fantastic in terms of being like an art supply to have in your collection or, you know, your kit or something to achieve a certain appearance, they're not as beginner friendly. I do think that like for someone who is kind of new to like an eye paint of any kind, the Hindash ones are really great because they are in very like, you know, mixable skin native kind of tones. And then you can move to something like the, if you want, or if you just want to use it as a very specific kind of eye paint, then, you know, talking about the About Face ones, that's going to be where I would recommend. And then, you know, if you want something shimmery, I actually would highly recommend going for, I know, I'm a jerk for saying this, but the Lisa Eldridge ones over the Danessa Myricks ones, because again, the way that these blend on the skin, they just are easier to use. They just have more kind of tenacity of the pigment, and they are also just, they're easier to blend before they dry down, to me. So there is Angelica versus Celebration versus Thorn. Okay, well, those are there for the rest of my life. Let's move on. Face and body foundations, Dior versus MAC. Dior is quite matte. Even if they don't say they are, they're quite matte, I really think. And the fragrance is really fragrant. Whereas Face and Body is going to be, the MAC Face and Body is going to be really like dewy and glycerin-y and gorgeous, but also really, really tenacious. Like it wears all day for something that looks like it is like, you know, healthy looking skincare. For dry skinned people, I would recommend the MAC all day long, all day long, all day long. Dior, I wouldn't recommend it for people with dry skin. Someone wants me to swatch Westman Atelier Petal or Mimi, swatch them against each other because we're skin twins. So, okay, so something that people get frustrated with is that the Mimi blush stick is exclusive to the Westman Atelier website, so you can't get it on sale or anything. But I think that they do that, you know, I think it's a wise thing that they do because it's just such an immaculate color. It's so good. So yeah, it makes Petal look pink as all get out by comparison, whereas Mimi is like practically nude on me, you know? I love Mimi. I reach for Mimi way more often, but like I said, very similar to a lot of other things. We swatched in the beginning, and I'll go ahead and pull. Here is Anastasia Latte, so that you can see, because like, if it really makes no never mind to you, who you're buying from, Latte is extraordinarily similar and it's a lot less expensive. So that's the Anastasia one. And then someone did ask to compare the Violette FR Louise shade because I like that one too, but it's a lot peacher. You see that? I sound like I have like 15 different double standards, right? About, you know, what I like in makeup and what I don't, because I'm always like, oh, the fragrance, oh, the fragrance. It depends on whether I like the fragrance. Fragrances that I like: Chanel, Gucci, freaking Violette FR blushes. Oh my God, put this in a perfume. I want to wear this all the time, okay? Fragrances that I don't like: Guerlain, Kierweiss. Oh God, so bad. And sometimes it's different as far as like, you know, what I put on my face versus what I put on my lips, because I love the Gucci bronzer scent, or I love the scent in the bronzer, but like you put it in Lorna Doone the lipstick and like I kind of have a hard time, okay? I don't want to taste it. And I love a vanilla. I love vanilla anything. I feel like vanilla is, to me, the most unoffensive thing in the world. But I know that, you know, someone is going to be offended by anything. So Chanel Sublimage Le Temps versus Chantecaille Future Skin. I'm going to go for the Chanel just because I love it so much, but they're very, very similar. And good Lord, I mean, you're talking about the difference between $130 or $135 and $80 for a foundation. Both wildly expensive. One just happens to be even wilder. The thing that I like about the Chanel is that it's just so darn hydrating. It's so like beautifully nourishing on dry skin over the course of the entire day. Which is why I even continue just, you know, even when I use a different foundation, I reach for the concealer because it's just so good. And like, yeah, I like the Chantecaille, I do, but I just didn't think of it as often as I think of the Chanel. Like the Chanel is like a comfort product for me because it not only works exactly the same and so beautifully every single time I use it, but also it improves my skin over time. My skin is so happy when I wear that stuff. So that's what keeps me coming back to it. Lip gloss, Pat McGrath versus Victoria Beckham. I'm gonna say Victoria Beckham because for whatever reason, Victoria Beckham's lip glosses don't, at least on me, they don't do the thing with the white ring of death around your lips. Whereas the Pat McGrath ones will. They just will. And I know that the colors are incredible in both cases, so I do feel like it's a pretty fair comparison, but you know, like I'm not gonna kick either one out of bed. Love Potion from Pat McGrath and Bikini from Victoria Beckham Beauty. Like I'm never gonna complain about either one of those, but if I had to pick one between the two, I would go for the Victoria Beckham. Hindash Eye Pencil or Beautopsy Intra versus Hindash Color Fluid and Thorn. I love Hindash's mind. He is just a genius, but I do reach for Thorn the most out of everything. And it's because a pencil, regardless of the consistency of the pencil, regardless of how beautifully satin kajal it is, Victoria Beckham Beauty, it never is going to beat the immaculate application that I get from the Thorn color fluid. And especially, I hope he comes out with a black, even though he's got that absolutely gorgeous eyeliner. You know, he does have the Hero line. It's the best liquid eyeliner I've ever used, but Thorn goes on so easily, it just kind of completely ignores and disregards all of the kind of complicated skin texture that I have on one eye versus the other. It's so easy to control. It actually, like, you can blur it a little bit, so you don't have to apply a super solid, highly saturated line every time, which as you age, super solid, super saturated lines are not always the most flattering things because they kind of start to call attention to imperfections because they're so graphic. And so I like having that option. And also something that I noticed, not with Hero line, but with other liquid eyeliners, is that depending on the application method, like with the La Perla, for example, that liquid eyeliner has a brush that pulls out of, it's on a wand that pulls out of a tube. And so you do end up with a lot of the actual eyeliner on that wand. And like that brush is what you're supposed to use to apply it with. Whereas, you know, with this, not really. You know, I put a brush on it. And so even if I were to apply that directly to my skin, what it doesn't do, what this doesn't do, that a lot of liquid eyeliners do, is it doesn't get in your eyelashes and gum them all up, because that's so aggravating when you go to put on your mascara and your eyelashes are all stuck together because you accidentally got liquid eyeliner in them. So stupid and frustrating. And it was something that I didn't even realize I kind of accidentally noticed, because I always said I can use the Hindash color fluids on a regular like synthetic eyeshadow brush and it doesn't freeze my bristles up. So it's the same science, right? It stays soft and it stays kind of like brushable, movable, blendable. And for that reason, it doesn't end up drying down to a solid on, you know, whatever bristles or your eyelashes. And so it's genius, okay? I don't know how he did it, but this stuff is incredible. Such like an understated, stupid little thing to be obsessed about, but like I am. It's just so different for the right reasons. Like when people come out with makeup that is just pointless because it already exists 17 other places, like it's kind of frustrating. And that's why I do videos like this, right? It's to, like I said, it's to do the disambiguation. But this is just like the thing that rises to the top in its category because every single use case for it, using it as a primer, using it as a blush, using it as a lipstick, I mean all the different colors, using it as an eyeliner, using it as an eyeshadow and actually blending and blurring it, it never fails. It never complains. You can go, I wonder if it's gonna, it will. It'll mix with your foundation, it'll mix with your primer. Most things that I have ever tried, you can use to mix, like you can use these to mix with and get something new that will perform better than, you know, the sum of its parts. That's my opinion on the Hindash color fluids versus its competitors. And that's why I reach for it every single day. That's why I have it on my eyes right now. And so that I don't make myself hoarse, I'm going to call it on this one. This is going to be the end of this video. Why am I talking like that? Like, oh, officially the end of this video. Thank y'all for watching and for submitting your questions. I try to get to as many as I can that are unique to things that we haven't talked about in past videos. So again, I will put a video right here, I'm sorry, a playlist right here of my previous this or that videos. And if you liked this, please make it official and go ahead and hit it with an actual like. Helps me out quite a bit, and subscribe if you haven't already. I love y'all so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. That's gross.